Hello request video. This one's from Gypsy Hustle, who gives me lots of requests. He goes, video request. What are your thoughts about being too old to enjoy a hobby? I've heard people say to others that they are too old to be playing video games or reading comic books. Do you think because people age that they should have to give up on fun hobbies they enjoy and act more mature? I noticed a lot of hippies ended up becoming staunch Republicans supporting harsh war on drugs and aggressive foreign policy. What causes people to change from being cool to supporting the fascists? Thanks. Yeah. What are my thoughts on being too old to enjoy a hobby? Yeah. Well, the whole idea about people thinking that they're too old to do something, like it's not status quo, like other people telling you should act more mature. Like, dude, I'm like almost 40 years old. And I've been like kind of living independent life for a while. I haven't been in college or high school for a long ass time. So I'm kind of not brainwashed. And because I haven't been working in like some weird corporate environment where everybody brainwashes each other to like fall in line and all be the same and shit. So I'm not like, luckily, I'm not like that. I don't really relate to that whole peer pressure thing. It doesn't affect me. If somebody's going to say something to me like, oh, I think you're a nerd, don't talk to me, I don't want to hang out with you or whatever because you're weird because you do stuff that other people don't do, then I'd just be like, wow, what an idiot, and I just wouldn't talk to him, and that's it, and if I work with them, I just have a professional relationship with them, but I wouldn't chat with them and stuff. But anybody trying to tell some other person that they're too old to do something or whatever, it's like, damn, dude, like where'd you hear that? Like, who told you that? What TV did you hear that from? Like, it's weird. It's a weird concept. But as far as like feeling yourself that you would be too old to enjoy a hobby, yeah, it is kind of interesting how people's interests change as they get older. And there's lots of videos you can do about that, man. And that's a kind of genre that I'd love to get into. Just, because I have a lot of really like younger subscribers, and I think they'd be interested in hearing what I have to say about how you change as you get older. But like one way you change as you get older is like some big trip is less romantic, it's less exciting. Like my kayak trip, like I could get too old to just not ever do it because I just lose my interest. It doesn't seem cool anymore. Last year when I was going to do it, that was the perfect time to do it. But then, I realized I didn't want to sell my car, and I just do it later. But I wouldn't be surprised if I do it in 5 years. And I don't think you're ever too old to do something like that mentally, or physically if you're in shape. But like a hobby, like little kitty hobbies, like let's say I've heard people say to others they're too old to be playing video games or reading comic books. Well, you can't be too old to play video games because the technology is so awesome. Old people should play video games just to become familiar with it and to know how cool it is, just for 5 minutes or something like that. And but like to play video games, like a kid does, like all the time, and you're old, like 60. I think look, lots of 60-year-olds have hobbies that are just as useless, like just as kind of, don't produce an actual result, just like passing the time, as playing video games, like sitting on the porch and drinking beer, So, I wouldn't say somebody some old guy who plays video games isn't less mature than some old guy who sits on the porch playing beer. Drinking beer. It's actually maybe even better, I don't know, because exercising your brain in that way. But I mean, I would be a little bit freaked out if I saw some old person playing with G.I. Joes on the floor. You die. I mean, I'd respect their ability to imagine like that, but I would definitely, my ears would prick up and I'd keep an eye on them, and really close eye on them to see if they did anything else weird, because it wouldn't affect the way I treat them. I'm not like that with people. That's a personality strength of mine. I wouldn't let them know that like alarm bells are going off, but I would definitely be like keeping an eye on them. I wouldn't like loan them my car right away. But if they turn out to be like some like, I don't know, man, they could be that one cool old guy who plays G.I. Joes, but yeah, let's see, what else did you say? Video games and reading comic books. I never read comic books as a kid. My brother did, and he collected them, and he has a few, but he has a really active imagination with that kind of stuff. I never did. No. Elf Tales. Elf Tales? The elves? My brother bought those. He got into them, and I think I read through a couple of them, and it was like adventures and stuff of the elves, and I thought that was pretty interesting. I was into that, but that was pretty much, and then, like Garfield and stuff, and The Far Side. Dude, you can never be too old for The Far Side. That's funny as hell. But a lot of like the funnies, I've lost interest in the funnies. I don't find them amusing at all anymore. Not really, but in the newspaper. But oops. But I think different funnies are funny for different people. Like Doonesbury, those are for the old people, so you can't be too old for those. Okay, and they should have to give up fun hobbies that they enjoyed and act more mature. Well, nobody should have to do anything. I mean, like, who would tell you? Your parents are going to be dead by the time you're an old guy, so who's bossing you around? You're not going to have friends who are going to boss you around. Is it your wife? And if you feel like you should have, like from yourself, like you'd feel embarrassed or something, like, well, yeah, why would you feel embarrassed about being different from other people? That's another concept that luckily I have drifted away from. I have freed myself from. I don't worry about what other people think about me. I noticed a lot of the hippies ended up becoming staunch Republicans supporting harsh war on drugs and aggressive foreign policy. Yeah. I've noticed, marijuana is still illegal, and back in this is decisions made by people who were fucking hippie age back then, or probably were like, well, yeah, whatever, man. I don't know anybody specifically, but my relation with this would be, I've heard of people who say like, oh, when I was a kid, I used to terrorize the teacher, but I'm not like that anymore. When I was a kid, I was stupid and I would do this, and I'm not like it anymore. And, I'm not like that. When I was a kid, I was the same exact person as I am now. In fact, I was a lot more mature than I am now in a lot of ways. I was a lot more reserved and wasn't didn't use so much slang and all that kind of stuff. But like, people who talk like, oh, I was so different when I was a kid, and now I've changed and I'm mature. Like, I think those are people who just aren't as smart. Like, genetically, their brains just aren't that strong, and they can't remember the past, and they change a lot in one life, and maybe like a young soul, like an old soul would change less in one life. A young soul would change a lot, kind of like somebody who, like somebody who's new to a new sport would change a lot in their skill set or whatever, and then somebody who'd been doing it a long time. And so I think people who are like, hippies, and when they were younger, and then grow up and become staunch Republicans supporting harsh war on drugs and aggressive foreign policy, are just, weak-brained people. Maybe like young souls, just, very and very impressionable people who basically go with the flow, go with the tide of, or like the people around them. I mean, and maybe I was a little bit harsh on that because I can't really relate to a lot of stuff that people can, because luckily for me I've been free and I don't have as like things tying me down, and so I haven't had one of these like corporate jobs where you have the same job for like my whole life. And I mean, if I was in a situation where I grew up and I was in a high school, a regular big high school, and then I did the college thing and they allowed me to graduate, I mean, if they had allowed me to graduate, I'd probably be a teacher right now. And then you get a job and you have the same job and you're in this, and you never had a period of time where you were by yourself a lot and you're allowed to like develop your own thoughts about stuff. It's conceivable that, yeah, like I could, if I was in that situation, I could grow up and just be impressionable my whole life, and have these harsh foreign policies and war on drugs and all that kind of stuff because as a result of me being around other people who believe like that, and coming up through the ranks, maybe from like a big corporation, you bust up through the ranks and, when in Rome, do what the Romans do. So you act like the bosses do, you do what they do, you follow their guidance. And by the time you finally get to the top, you've fucking been brainwashed, you've been in that world, so immersed in that world that you actually believe all of this shit that, like war on drugs and aggressive foreign policy. It's kind of like, kind of these things that take on lives of their own, because they've got, we spend $40 billion a year on the war on drugs. And the foreign policy, I mean, we spend 20% of our taxes on defense. And so, if we're going to switch out that, the way that we spend all that money, it's going to put a lot of people out of work. A lot of people are going to need to be retrained. It's a really big, jolt to our society and our economy. And it's not, and if you're a big boss player, in one of these industries, even if you were Mr. Hippie Boy when you were a kid, and you've got kids to support, I mean, sometimes you got to sell your soul to the devil to keep your kids and wife happy, So, yeah, dude, having dependents can really, really like tie you down, dude, and fuck your life, man. I mean, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I guess it could be some kind of combination between those two things, just being, stupid, generally dumb, and not having a memory, and being brainwashed. What causes people to change from being cool to supporting the fascists? Thanks. Well, what causes it? Yeah, it's like what I said. It's it's being immersed in a certain group of people thinking a certain way for so long that, that saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So long that once you get old, like, fuck, man, you could explain something to somebody like my mom. I've explained the concepts to my mom, basically defending myself. And then she'd attack me with the same damn thing a few days later, and I'd be like, wait, didn't we already have this conversation? And I'd have to explain to her again, and it's, old people, they just, you gotta remind them. And, also, when people get older, their memories get a little bit bad, so imagine some old dude who can't really remember the details of what you're telling him, and then you're so out of his paradigm that you have to explain it to him, and then he just doesn't get it, and then you have to tell him again, and then just... So, yeah, I think if people want to be more independent-minded and have more integrity and do stuff because it's right, but not because you have to. Because when people get older, a lot of times people are like, well, it's just the way it is. You just have to, man. I mean, fuck. Get with the program. It's just like that. Why is it like that? It's like that because it's like that. What do you mean why it's like that? Yeah, to avoid people from falling into that trap. I think it would be good to encourage people to switch up, and it's good that it's happening, switch up careers throughout your life, and allow, in jobs when you hire people, not make people have these like multi-year contracts and stuff, and just try to create a culture where people can move around a lot. I mean, the world, like America, has got so many cool towns. Like, why would you spend your whole life in one town? You should live in this town for a couple years, be able to move to some other town for a few years, or go to another town for 1 year and just move around, and it'll allow your brain to look at everything from different angles and see stuff for what it is, like see the war on drugs for what it is. This just fear-based, going to get the boogeyman. If we kick all their asses and throw them all in jail, then we'll wipe out. Nobody will ever smoke marijuana ever again, and this kind of shit. And yeah, it's better for people to be able to look at the whole picture and take everything into account and communicate and stuff. And the best way for that is to allow people to just move around, be free, keep their brains limber, and not freeze them in some solid state. Yeah, so yeah, and I think one way to fix it is also like eccentric old people, man, are great. Eccentric old people just acting like kids, like the Angry Grandpa show, man. That guy's cool. He just acts all crazy, and he's this old dude acting all crazy, man. I mean, old people teaching the young people that it's like there's just because you have your hair turned white doesn't mean you have to turn into some like overly judgmental, reserved, close-minded, person. You can continue to be fun and all that. So anyways, I hope I'll be an old man and be chill. I bet you I will, though. 'Cause I was lucky and I got to be free. Okay, that's about that. Peace out.